Welcome to another special report of Catholic Family News. I'm Brian McCall, the editor-in-chief, and I'm happy to be joined today by Father John Lovell of the Coalition for Canceled Priests. Welcome back, Father.
Thank you, Brian, so much, and thank you for having me on again.
Yes, and our topic today is to discuss last weekend, the Coalition held in Chicago its annual conference. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the conference, how it went, and some of the resources that are now available as a result. So the conference was in Chicago, was on the 23rd and 24th, and the theme was House United. So why don't we start with you, Father, just telling us a little bit about that theme, what the reason for the theme and what it meant.
Well, to be honest with you, and this is well before COVID, we've heard the chants of unite or die or unite the clans, and that's wonderful. And there are sincere people out there wanting both. But as you well know, Brian, that there are a lot of people out there who like to say that and who like to say that we need to be united, but then they specifically go out of the way to exclude certain groups. And that was demonstrated very well about a month and a half ago with just the uproar over Patrick Coffin's Hope is Fuel series that he did. And I want to say in March, Joseph Gallagher, our producer, as well as Jesse Romero, Tom Oglesby, and I met in Dubuque, Iowa for another conference. And we sat down at breakfast and we were thinking about what should our theme be for our conference. And I want to let everyone know that's watching, I'm not a big fan of themes. I'm not a big fan of mission statements. I think they're overdone. Okay, our theme last year was Finding Hope in the Desert. My podcast is named Hope in the Desert. I was completely fine continuing with that name. But Joseph Gallagher said, who led the church militant resistance and basically developed it into a 7,000 to 8,000 strong resistance movement. He said, no, we have to be a house united. We have to come together. We have to put aside what are minor bickerings that a lot of times takes up a lot of the chatter on the so-called right, the so-called conservative, so-called traditional side of things. And we have to be a house united. And we have to come together and say, look, things are so bad, okay? We have to put away the old stereotypes. We have to break down the walls that separated us, okay? This is not 1988 anymore. This is not 1976. This is 1969 anymore. What we're seeing is that Catholics now, post-COVID, post-Traditionis Custodes, have to unite, have to put away the minor bickering and unite. And if we're going to have differences, fine, we do it in a charitable way. But we're no longer going to be going out there and attacking each other and saying, well, you're not doing this and you're not doing this, or you should be doing this or you should be doing that. And so the theme was, we're going to come together, and we had about 16 speakers, not all of whom agree on everything, and to have a discussion and to have fellowship. But I think the best part of the conference was that fellowship. We had a wonderful lineup of speakers, you being one of them. But what it comes down to was a chance for over 400 Catholics to come together of all stripes and to realize they're not alone.
No, and I think I agree with you as well. There's a lot of people put a lot of stock in slogans and themes, but it's just words. And I would say, from my perspective, being there at the conference, I spent a lot of time out at the halls. We had a little table there, so I met a lot of people. And it was really such an incredible, diverse group of Catholics. So it wasn't just like, well, it's this kind of conference and these are the kind of people who go to it. I mean, met people who had been going to the traditional mass since the 1970s, right? You mentioned the 76. I met people who this was their first traditional mass going here at the conference. I met, again, a whole spectrum of people who go to Ecclesia Dei priests, who go to a diocesan, what I guess used to call the indult. I don't know what we call it now after Traditionis Custodes, the underground indult. But again, a whole variety of people, all united in, again, when I talk to all of them about concern for the church, wanting to live their faith. And you're absolutely right, differences. But there used to be a time when Catholics could be okay with that. I'm different. This is my apostolate. I kind of do this thing, you do that thing, but it's not a competition. It's not like everybody has to be with me. We're all rowing in the same direction, even if we're, taking different stations in the boat. So I think I saw that on the ground, definitely.
Kennedy Hall made mention of that as well. He was one of our speakers. And after the Saturday night keynote, there was a bunch of us up in my room discussing what was going on. And he made a toast, and he made a very wonderful toast. I'm hoping to get the exact wording of it. I was very tired, and it was very late when he made it. But he made a wonderful toast of how some Catholic conferences, while very traditional, kind of veer towards more of the political. We did
Mm,
not. We focused in on being Catholic and standing up for Catholics' rights. We had wonderful talks, not only by you, but by Dr. Peter Kwasniewski, by Dr. Janet Smith, by Jesse Romero, basically
mm,
saying you have the right to your Catholic patrimony, not just the traditional Latin Mass, although that is
mm,
very important. Okay.
mm,
But you have a right to the understanding of what it means to be a Catholic in this day and age. And a lot of people, especially those that come from solidly Catholic countries, might criticize Americans that even before the Second Vatican Council, we were somewhat infected with Americanism, which
mm,
is condemned, and that we kind of have this. Even as Catholics, we kind of have a skewed view because we were brought up to have this understanding of what the United States is in a Protestant lens. And so what we're trying to do as a coalition, not just to help cancel priests, even though that is our main job, it is to try to educate Catholics in being a better Catholic. And I think all Catholic organizations should do that. No matter what their main mission is, their
mm,
secondary mission should always be to have better catechesis, to have better apologetics, so that Catholics are well formed. As I've said this a couple of times during the conference, because even some of our uh, closest allies and even our employees sometimes slip up and say coalition of canceled priests. No, no,
mm,
coalition for canceled priests. And it's Catholics coming together, the laity realizing that their priests are being sidelined, not for doing anything wrong, but for standing up for the truth. And that we have to rally behind that. But it's also remembering it's not going to be the bishops, it's not going to be the priests, to quote the Venerable Fulton J. Sheen. It's going to be
mm,
the laity that are going to bring about the reform. And it's so needed now. And I want to say, if I could say this, Brian, because I know
mm,
there are many traditionalists who grew up in tradition and have never attended the Novus Ordo or anything like that. There are a lot of solid Catholics that attend the Novus Ordo, not because they hate the traditional mass or think that
mhm,
what's the big deal. It's just they were never exposed to it.
mm,
They never saw it. For a while they might have were fed into the propaganda, but now they're starting to wake up after the McCarrick scandal, after Pachamama, and I think COVID is a result of Pachamama. That is my personal belief. And now to Traditionis Custodes, you're having Catholics kind of going, "There's something wrong here." And my message to traditionalists is we need to have welcome them with open arms. Okay, we have to be careful of saying "told you so." We have to be careful of all of that because people are on, as you said, are different paths but coming together. And that was part of the conference, is to show the Catholicity that is so
mm.
right now in the church.
And you're right. It may have been you, but I think it was another speaker who made that exact point about COVID as well. They said it doesn't seem to be a coincidence that this idolatry occurs in the primal see, right, in the Holy See, in fall of 2019, and then a few months later, this strange whole COVID situation unleashes. But it is also a beautiful example of God bringing good out of evil. Because I talked to several people at the conference who, again, had the COVID experience really opened their eyes. As you said, they're very good people of goodwill, trying to save their soul. But when they were abandoned by their bishops, sometimes by their own, pastors, they began to look around and see, wow, there's something wrong in the church here, and I can't just sort of sit back and do what I've always done. That there's a problem, and again, God bringing that good out of even that situation, and several stories like that I heard from people that I taught. Again, I enjoyed the conference that I listened to, but I enjoyed almost as much just visiting with a lot of, as you say, new people. And I noticed everyone there from your organization was very welcoming. The speakers that you had were happy to talk to people. And you're absolutely right. A lot of people forget, Archbishop Lefebvre, for example, he wasn't all about, well, you've got to join me. You've got to join the Society of St. Pius X. I mean, he founded that. He had a seminary for seminarians, but he understood it was a very particular vocation. And he said, look, if this is a very missionary spirit, if this is what you're called to, we'll let you try it. But he always worked with other groups, Benedictines, Carmelites, Dominicans. And he didn't just say, well, you've got to get into my box and work with me. But no, he, throughout the 70s and 80s, would have convened meetings in France with different monasteries or even other priests. Father Pulvermacher, for example, a priest a lot of people there actually had some experience with. He never became a society priest. He was ran the Angelus Press for many years, but worked alongside the Archbishop. And I think you're right. A lot of times traditionalists forget that. Some do, and think if you're not with me doing exactly what I'm doing, you're against me, which is not what our Lord meant, right? He meant you can be with me, but different gifts are given by the same Spirit and different callings. So I think I saw that at the conference. I think you definitely achieved that.
No, and I know we're going to talk about this later in the show,
Yes.
but just real quickly is that, sometimes I will hear from the laity, oh, well, Bishop Strickland chose his lot. He should have realized better. But thank God we have our own bishops in the SSPX. And I think that's the wrong attitude. And I got to be clear, I've never gotten that attitude from the priests. And I've not met many, but I have met Father McMahon, Father Sick, Father Pagliani, Bishop Fillet. I never got that impression from the priests, but sometimes you get that impression. We don't have to worry about that stuff because we kind of have our own thing. And so I encourage, the laity, whether they go to the so-called indult masses, the society masses, or some other traditional group, okay, we got to try to start breaking this down. And I'm going to be the first to admit it. It sounds very idealistic. Okay, it sounds very much pie in the sky. I get that. But what did COVID, and again, why was it called 19? Because it started in 2019. Everybody thinks because the lockdown started in 2020 that's when it started. No. But the lockdowns proved that Catholics need to unite. Okay, in my opinion, the shutdowns were designed to see if the New World Order, if this big world government could get away with it, and I think a lot of them can. So if you think that's not going to happen again, think again. All right. And I don't know about you, Brian, but I am going to want to receive the sacraments from a validly ordained priest that believes what Jesus Christ teaches and follows the church. I don't care what's after that.
Absolutely. This is, and I think this was Jesse Romero, said these are huge issues. I mean, these things he was talking about the Dodger Stadium situation, and he just said, stop. I'll paraphrase, I don't remember exactly. We got to stop yelling at somebody for going to an SSPX mass, or that he said we've got these huge problems going on in the church, and we got to stop doing this. And again, I think your choice of invitations to speakers really conveyed that message. I mean, to have a mix of people from, I mean, I'll admit, I didn't never think maybe 15 years ago I'd be invited to speak at the same conference as Dr. Janet Smith, for example. Like we were just in the way the world was, sort of different circles, it would be called, just to pick one example. But I think you really succeeded.
And not only that, I mean, I don't want to say that she's seen the light, okay? But in many ways, Brian, she's more of a rad trad than you or I are. I mean, she was for many years teaching in diocesan seminary, and she retired in good standing, whatever that means. And but she started to notice there was something about the
Mm,
traditional mass, and now she's
mm,
only a traditional mass goer. And I've said this many times that
yes.
really on the so-called Catholic right, you have the neocons, the George Weigel's Catholic Answers group, okay, Trent Horn. Then you have the
Mm,
charismatics, which I think are the smallest group. Everybody likes to talk about how
yeah.
small traditionalists are. And then you have the traditionalists. And you and I, when you were on my show a few weeks ago, we talked about with Joe Gallagher really what we're going to start seeing. Not that it's going to be easy. We're going to start seeing the merging, possibly and hopefully,
Mhm,
of the traditional movement and the charismatic. But you have these three groups.
mm,
But we had a lot of speakers:
mm,
Jesse, Janet, Doug,
yes.
Gary. That might have been more towards the neocon group at one
Mhm,
time in their life. Okay, but now all three of them attend the traditional mass. Now all three of them are pushing unity, and we need to have conversations. And I always tell people that are hesitant about Archbishop Lefebvre two
mhm.
things. And I've said this before. I only met my first society priest in 2021, who's Father McMahon. And so, I'm not an apologist for the society. I'm an apologist for the Catholic Church. But I'll say this: all Catholics should at least read A Letter to Confused Catholics by Archbishop
Mm,
Lefebvre. Okay. I always like to say we're about 30 to 40 years behind Europe
yes.
collapse, but guess what? We're catching up very quickly in this country.
We are closing the gap, definitely. I used to say we lived in Europe. I used to say, "Oh, Europe, we're about 30 years behind," but it's the gap is closing,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely.
Yes. Well, I think you've done something extraordinary for conferences because most conferences, and we've done it ourselves, try to sell the talks or access to the talks afterwards to help defray some of the costs of the conference. But I've noticed your YouTube channel, Coalition for Canceled Priests, has already started posting for free many of these conferences. So that's really wonderful that you're making them available. So we have a few here I think that we see on screen that are mixed in with some other things from your channel, but you can see some from the conference. I see yours there. Um, and so, will you be making all of these conferences available for free?
We are, and I just want, because we're already getting, where's Dr. Peter Dr. Where's John Henry Weston's? We're releasing two a day because we don't want well, one, we need the time to edit them. Okay.
Yes.
We're a small team. Our AV team did a fantastic job, but it's a team of three and led by Joe Gallagher. But we have to take the time to edit them. So we're releasing two a day, and we're trying to release them as best as possible in chronological order. Yours was the first one released. Uh, but I also encourage people. YouTube already took down Abby Johnson's talk. All right.
Wow.
Let me make a plug here right now, especially for those that want to say, why are you on YouTube? We're on YouTube because our talks there get thousands and thousands of views. Okay. We're on Rumble as well. We are also on Spiritus TV. Highly encourage everyone to go there. But here's the problem: Abby Johnson, right now, her talk, which was one of the best, she kicked us off. She's only at about 300 views on Rumble and about 192 views. This is when I checked this morning on Spiritus TV. She should be in the tens of thousands right now. And when people say to me, why are you on YouTube? It's exactly because of that, because Catholics still seem to be going to YouTube
Mm,
for things. And so when people say you got to get off YouTube, I completely agree, but we need to start getting people on Rumble and Spiritus because the numbers are just simply not there yet. So I highly encourage everyone, if you want to watch the talks and don't want to have to deal with YouTube, go to our Rumble page. You just go to Rumble. Instead of typing in Coalition for Canceled Priests, just type in Canceled Priests and our page should come up. Spiritus TV, it's a little simpler. As long as you type in Coalition for Canceled Priests, it will come up. And Spiritus TV is a relatively new platform, but it is not agenda driven. It simply wants to put out their Catholic videos. All right.
mm.
And again, they want to be a house united as well. And we have to realize that we need to unite. That's the most important thing.
And we're the same way. I agree with you, Father. And I'm glad to know now you have a Rumble channel, so I'll keep sending people there. We have both, but I wish we could get rid of YouTube because we've
Love
had
to.
things
I
taken
would love
down. But that's where we're reaching people. So I say we're there as long as we as long as they let us. But please, people, go over to support Rumble so that there is a place for when things taken down, and definitely watch Abby Johnson's. That was the first conference given, and it was very inspiring. I actually thought at the time she was speaking, if this goes on YouTube, it'll be taken down.
And it
So,
was. It
yeah.
was in less than 12 hours. And you mentioned that we're giving it away free. Everyone listening, please go to canceledpriest.org to donate for us to defray costs. We have, as far as I know, I have to double check, we have 3 different categories: our general fund, our conference fund, and our house fund for the priests. Please feel free to donate to any of those, but to defray costs for the videos, highly encourage you to donate to the conference fund. We do put that in the comment sections on all the platforms, but we wanted to make these available as soon as possible. And what I was immensely surprised at, Brian, because we got a little pushback from certain people before the conference that we were charging too much. A VIP ticket was $350, a general ticket was $250, and then we also had just single day tickets. But everyone at the conference said how wonderful it is, and they couldn't believe, for what we were giving them, how cheap it was. And compared to other conferences like the Napa Institute, Angelus Press, Catholic Identity Conference, we're at least half the price. I mean, Napa Institute, I want to say, is $2,400 just for the ticket. Right now, you get
for the number of speakers alone, I couldn't believe how low it was, because you had more speakers than any conference I think I've been to.
And I think I don't think we're going to hear one complaint from those that attended the conference about, why are you giving the videos away free because we paid? Because it was not just about the talks; it was about that fellowship. One of the complaints that we did receive, and that I experienced, was people kept talking at their tables like Tom Oglesby, our MC, was trying to give direction. I taught high school for many years. I know how to get a room silent and to get them silent quickly. Not everybody knows how to do that. And so some of the speakers, kept talking while other groups were talking at the table. And yes, that is a problem. But I always try to look at the problem and say, well, what's the flip side of this? People were enjoying each other's company so much.
Yes.
That fellowship was there. It was, everybody was getting along. Everybody was getting along. And that was so important. Everybody just loved the vendors. And we got some of the vendors. You were in the second international. You were in the international ballroom section there.
Yes.
And some of the vendors there did complain. Why are people saying that they didn't know we were over here? We made the announcement every hour. Please, there is a second room of vendors. Just walk around by the front desk and keep walking, and you'll see it. But we made the announcement. So I want to let you know, we did not try to put Catholic Family News in the corner.
No, I was thrilled because we were right by the temporary chapel where Mass was. So I thought it was the best location to be, right next to where the Mass was offered. I don't know how many you had. It seemed like all day long there were different masses going on. So I was thrilled to be in that location. So
and for any of the bishops watching, they were all private masses.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Thank you for organizing the conference. I think it was a great show of Catholic unity from different perspectives. But in the midst of this conference, the news emerged about this apostolic visitation that was performed on Tyler, Texas. Bishop Strickland, almost 1 week to the day after he was the only U.S. bishop to show up at the Dodgy Dodger Stadium for the reparation. Again, I don't like calling it a protest. I think Bishop Strickland was very good about calling it a prayer of reparation for what was going on. And I know you addressed that. I think, did you record a message to His Excellency in support at the conference?
We did, and that message is already out, and all the priests gathered on stage and gave our blessing to Bishop Strickland. I'm waiting for the theologians to come out at us saying that the lesser can't bless the higher. But I always like to say this: Bishop Strickland's not my bishop, so I could certainly extend my blessing to him and vice versa. It's so important, though, that we pray for bishops to stand up and take courage. And
Mm,
again, I think this is something that Archbishop Lefebvre
mm,
desperately wanted. He had he built up at the council itself a very big coalition, and it would
mm,
not surprise me if he was a little heartbroken to see it kind of fall apart, as many
mm.
of those bishops just basically fell in line. Now, you had some like Hester de
Okay.
Meyer, who
Yes.
some would say was even more traditional than Archbishop Lefebvre, who stood their ground as well. But
Yes.
many of them, just basically fell into line
Yes.
for one reason or another, and I'm sure that was heartbreaking for him, especially for the Italian bishops that he knew that he was very close to, and
Yes.
especially for I believe it was the Bishop of Covington in the
Mm,
60s, 70s that he was also very close to. That
mm,
they didn't understand the importance of what was going on, and maybe if we had more bishops back then stand their ground, we would not be in the crisis that we're in now. But thank the Lord that we're seeing this from bishops, and we need to encourage the Stricklands, the Corleones. We can criticize them privately if we want for things that they might not have done, but
mm.
they're the only bishop. I mean, Corleone was the only bishop out in the parks of California, blessing and doing reparations for damages against the Saint Junipero Serra statues. As
Yes.
far as I know, he was the only one. Granted, I would like him to go farther, and thank God for the society priests down in Los Angeles getting
Mm,
Chris Millar, to sue the state of California to get that overturned. That was great. I would love to have seen Corleone lead that,
mm.
but they need to know that they have support. They need to know that if they stand up for the truth and be true shepherds, the faithful are going to back them.
Well, and it was good to see. I saw even after this news was announced, Bishop Strickland didn't seem to be holding back the truth. He still was making public statements on Twitter, consistent with his past. So
And
again, I would.
he retweeted our message to him. And
Huh?
the other day, it's been 2 days since I checked. I hate to tell everyone this, but I rarely go on social media. It's essential. But when last I checked, there were over 100,000 views
Wow.
for the message that we sent him, and so that is so important. And it's just, I just want to say to Catholics, and whether you attend the society or some other traditional group, whether you still attend your local Novus Ordo parish, if you want to truly be Catholic, we have to unite.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what unfolds, but I wouldn't be surprised if you may get a call and he may need a place in your house for canceled priests.
We already have a bishop's suite, so there you
Oh,
go.
there you go. You're
We
prepared.
will do that. So
So it may have to become the coalition for canceled priests and bishops. That's
yeah,
that's how
exactly, exactly. But and I said this during my talk, Brian. Before
yes.
the Second Vatican Council, the Church always taught that the three major orders was subdeacon, deacon, and priesthood, and you were ordained to the minor orders and to the major
Yes.
orders. But the priesthood was not a separate order, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be looked at that by that. The bishop is consecrated as the
Yes.
high priest for that particular diocese, and,
Yes.
and we have to get back into that mindset that he is a priest first. Okay. Yes, he's
Mm,
the high priest of the diocese, but he's a priest. The priesthood is the highest order. That has
yes.
always been the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas and the teaching of the church.
Very true. Very, very true. And actually, Eric Salmons, when his talk gets up, had a very interesting talk with some interesting history on the nature of the relationship of the bishop with his diocese, which he's absolutely right. He talks about in the past, there was not this bureaucratic shifting and ladder climbing. If you were appointed a bishop, and I don't think he mentioned this, but many of the sources in the Middle Ages talk about it being equivalent to marriage. The bishop was married to his diocese, and therefore it was like a equivalent, in a sense, to a divorce to move him around. And he really had a good point about that. Is one of the problems with the situation of the church today, that these dioceses have become just sort of stepping stones to move around rather than this, as you say, I am the chief priest of this diocese of these people. So when his talk gets
Exactly.
up, I highly recommend our
And I
viewers
believe
listen
it
to it.
was St. Francis de Sales who was technically the Bishop of Geneva, but it was actually a small town. I'm escaping my
Mm,
mind right now outside of Geneva, because Geneva was controlled by the Protestants. But apparently he was offered Paris, and he said,
yes.
"I'm marrying a poor bride. I'm going to die with my poor bride."
Yes.
And when he was a cardinal, Ratzinger was very much for limiting moving of bishops. It should be a
Mm,
rare exception that a bishop gets moved. Okay.
yes.
And if you don't think you can do wonderful things in a small diocese, tell that to St. Augustine. Okay.
Mm,
And I'll say this to the priest: you don't think you can have railroad tracks built to your parish? Tell that to St. John Vianney, who's right behind me
yes.
right now. St. Francis de
That's,
Sales
that's
is right behind me as well. And we have to get to the understanding that there is no bad diocese, there's no small
mm,
diocese, there's no bad parish, there's no small parish. There is what the priest is willing to do along with the laity in order to build up that local church and to
mm,
rescue it. Okay. We had several priests visiting from around the world.
mm.
And I took the last priest back to the airport yesterday. He was heading back to Scotland, Father Dunn. And we're going around Chicago, and I'm showing him these magnificent parishes. And a lot of them are falling apart, dying, closing, and all of that. 70 years ago, Chicago was a powerhouse where
Mm.
people, even Protestants and Jews, would tell you their neighborhood by the name of the Catholic parish. All right.
Yes.
We have to get back to that mindset. We have to get back. It's not just the traditional Latin Mass. Again, as important as that is, it is about establishing the kingdom of God on earth. That Christ is our King. Now, can that still work in a republic like ours? Of course it can. Of course it can. And
Yes.
I have to say, someone who many trads might not like, but Tim Gordon actually makes that argument in one of his books, name escaping me right now, but that you can
Yeah.
actually have a Catholic kingdom in a republic. So we should not think that we also
Yes.
automatically necessarily have to get the Habsburgs back into rule or something like that. We have to establish Christ as our king and Mary as the Queen Mother.
Absolutely right. We don't have time we could do a whole show on it, but Moreno in Ecuador established the social reign of Christ the King for a period of time in a republic uh, that was under great Masonic control in the 19th century. So you're absolutely right. It's possible. Well,
Absolutely.
Father, that brings us I think, about to the end of our time together. But is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Any updates about the situation with the coalition before we part ways?
We we are we are preparing. A lot of people have asked, are we going to do this next year? And I hope so. It takes a lot
Yes.
of investment. I want to thank not only Joe Gallagher, who I've already mentioned, but Kayla Williams, Tom Oglesby, and really the whole team of volunteers that did this. We're a very small organization. We have just a few employees, and they really stepped up, and we put on almost a completely flawless talk.
Yes.
There were a couple of glitches that you and I have talked about, but I encourage everyone to please. We had a couple of dark horse candidates, or not candidates, dark horse speakers that people might not know. Highly encourage. I believe his talk is being released either today or tomorrow. Anthony Abati, who
Mm.
runs Avoiding Babylon, please listen to his. Matthew Pleasy. I don't know if you've had Matthew Pleasy on your show yet, but
Yes, he
Matthew,
writes for us, and he's been on the show. Yes.
yeah, I mean, his talk on fasting was
Mm.
just out of this world. Father Scott Duvall, who's our priestly assistance coordinator. I mean, these are names that people might not know very well, but I encourage them. They gave excellent talks, and
Mm.
they need to be listened to. And I just want to say this right now. Not that it matters, but you saw men, women, blacks, Latinos, whites, all coming together, because in the Catholic world, those things don't matter. We had a Fulbright
Yes.
scholar, we had lawyers, we had canon lawyers, we had someone who was a high school dropout speaking. All right,
Mm.
saw Catholicity on display. Okay,
Yes.
and I'm the first to say color doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter when it comes to pushing the kingdom of Christ, but you
Yes.
saw a well-rounded group of people, okay, old and young, middle-aged. Everyone was represented up on that stage, and it was beautiful to see.
It was. Well, thank you, Father. Please, uh, thank you for all you are doing for the priests out there. And again, we showed earlier the canceledpriest.org. If you can go there and help support their work, I'm sure it would be greatly appreciated. So thank you, Father. Thank you all for listening. And we'll hopefully see you in the next Catholic Family News special report.
Thank you, Brian.